All right. I think we're here. I think we're live. Hey, Scott.
Terence, how are you?
I'm doing really good, really good. We're going to have a fun day here with some home brewers spreading the word, right? I'm out here in sunny California. It looks like it's sunny in North Carolina today, too.
It's a nice day. Yes, indeed. Dry Sweet. For a change. Yes.
Sweet. Awesome. Cool. So welcome, everyone. I'm Terence Sullivan, Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. It's National Homebrew Day, and we're here to answer a few questions, tell a few stories, have a good old time. And as is customary, Scott, and all of our Facebook Lives, we start with a nice cold beverage of choice. I'm going old school. What do you got?
Well, I've got a cellar pull. This is a sour cherry blonde available only in Mills River. So
nice.
Thought I'd try it. Why not? Cheers.
For those people, cheers, everyone. For those people that don't know, we Scott's got his own little pilot brewery. Scott's on the innovation brewing team. Scott was the first brewmaster out in North Carolina and has since kind of gone back, I would say, Scott, to your roots of design. I mean, you've been designing our recipes for a long time, but like what I'm going to say this for you, what you really enjoy doing is just making cool beers, right?
Yeah, that's really true. I've done a lot of different, like yourself, Terence, a lot of different roles at the brewery over the years, and it's almost full circle for me now. Getting back to recipe design and R&D, that kind of thing. Love it.
Yeah, because when what year did you start Sierra Nevada?
2001.
And so in 2001, you were a brewer, and then we got the pilot brewery out here in California, and then you started taking over the pilot brewery. I'm sure we have some people that have heard of the beer camp program that we used to host, and Scott was the master brewer for the beer camp series.
The beer camp beers. Back to probably 05, maybe.
Yeah,
something like that.
That was about then. So anyway, so a little bit, my background, I grew up in San Francisco Bay Area, got into home brewing in the late 1980s, right before I was 21, and was making beer with some friends. I went to UC Davis, not really actually thinking about getting a brewing degree, and didn't even know Davis offered that until I went there and found out that they had a fermentation science degree in their food science department. Did that. Got my dream job at Sierra Nevada in 1994. Started as a graveyard brewer, and now I do a lot of stuff with our small innovative brands. So I work with Scott and the other people on his team to bring cool beers to the market and to our pubs. Scott, where'd you start? Because I know you were a home brewer before you started it.
Yeah. I was just trying to think before we got online here. It's kind of hard to remember way back sometimes, but I believe my first homebrew was in 1991. So 40 years ago, I was 18, and it was probably god awful, I would imagine.
You drank it anyway, so
of course, right? Of course. Gosh, a lot of wonderful memories home brewing with friends, in the kitchen making a huge mess, and later when I learned my lesson outside in the driveway where I could hose it down instead, that was a whole lot better.
There's a lot of wives and partners and husbands that are probably glad some of the home brewing moves out of the kitchen area. I know Ken has nightmare stories of his fermenters exploding and bottles exploding and his hidden from his mom in his closet in his room, and she was wondering what the heck was going on inside there. But anyways, he hit it pretty well. So anyway, so we're here to answer some questions. We got on the back end, we got some people supplying some of the questions you guys put in the chat, and I think that those are going to start raining through here in a few minutes. So if you're looking behind me, that's our fermentation cellars in Chico, and I think Scott, you're outside the brew house, right?
I am, yeah. I'm trying to think, Terrence, is that the cellar office? Is there a new cellar office?
No, I'm off from where the gift shop is, kind of where the tours start. So that's the 800 room. So anyways, okay. I guess they want us to chat a little bit about our first brews. I know when we were, I would brew at my friend Jim Tuck's house. You remember Jim?
Oh, of course I do. Yeah.
And so brewing at Jim's house, and he had a pretty cool, sophisticated system that we could churn out 15 gallons, so a half barrel of beer that lasted us at his party house about a week before we'd brew the next batch. So anyways, we always had one in the queue. So every Saturday we would brew to at least get us beer all through the week. And a lot of our early experimentations were with, we did a lot of Pilsners, but we did a lot of, porters, kind of brown ales. Nothing, I remember back in those days, just because, like that's about whenever I started discovering Sierra Nevada was in the mid 80s. And we were mimicking a lot of those recipes, and not really heavy on the hop side back then. I would say, and I don't know if you would agree, but IPAs definitely were not as popular as they are today back in those days. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember focusing on traditional English styles. Did a lot of stouts, a lot of porters, bitters, best bitters. Things like that. Always trying to emulate like Samuel Smith or classic beers.
I would say you probably drank a few Samuel Smiths back during brewing. I mean, that's one of the best things about brewing, right? Is having a couple beers while you're doing it all, and it's pretty.
Yeah. A lot of the I guess early homebrewing days for me occurred in Salt Lake City, and what's interesting about that is that I think things have changed since then and now, but at the time, you could only buy 3.2% ABV beer in the groceries or anywhere like that. You'd have to go to the state-owned liquor store to get even Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Right.
And so we would never do that because, rarely. We would rarely do that because it was so expensive. It was a rare occasion to make a trip down to the liquor store, and we'd buy 2-3 bottles of this or that, and it was such a treat.
Right. Totally. Yeah. I think we had our first question pop up there. Okay, so you can go ahead and read it if you want, Scott.
Oh, yeah. So Chris Gonzalez, thanks for the question. How much does the hop variability change your recipe? Are there modifications done on the fly, or did it all come down to the hop selection earlier, and once it hits the brew house, you get what you get? Let's talk about Pale Ale maybe just to start with. So we use Cascade in that beer exclusively. And, over the course of a year, we'll probably go through, a couple of dozen different lots of Cascade hops. And they're all a little different. It's true. The alpha acid is a little different. They are visually a little different. The oil contents are a little different. So we do try and adjust as we go, but probably the best strategy in a situation like that is going into a brewing season, if you will. We come up with hop lot blends. So we're going to blend out the hops that we have available over a long period of time so that the change throughout the season is extremely minimal.
Yeah, I was gonna point out Vinny's, and I was trying to actually look it up. What's his one beer that he does? And I think it's maybe Citra hops or Centennials. It's Row.
Is it a Simcoe? I think it's a Simcoe beer.
Oh, it's Simcoe. Yeah, Simcoe beer, and literally it's got the row and the
right.
Of where they harvested it, and I like to point out that I think hops are very similar to wine and grapes. Like you'll get different characteristics from hops within, like sure we get them from Yakima, but you'll see cascades that are totally different from one grower in one region of the Yakima Valley compared to another region in the Yakima Valley. And I'll say this, Scott, from the early days of going up to Yakima to pick out hops, a lot of times we would actually rub the hops and go, wow, that's an amazing aroma and amazing flavor on that cascade. And buy that way. And then we started kind of realizing as we were expanding and getting bigger and needing more hops, that we really tried to look at consistency from lot to lot, because you don't want variations in your flavor profile throughout the year with pale ale. You want that kind of nice, piney citrus characteristics to go in the beer. And so,
yeah, it's really challenging. We look at, when we're buying hops, we look at the HSI numbers. That's the hop storage index. That gives us a clue about how stable the character of the hop will be as it ages. We take a good portion of what we buy and pack it in Mylar so that it's in an oxygen-free container, and so then it's going to change minimally throughout the year. All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and I would say, like, as a home brewer, some of the things, like, I mean, you can worry a little bit about those things, but unless you're gonna, you got enough storage and you have the ability, maybe you want to master your pale ale recipe or whatever beer it is, you might want to buy enough ingredients to last for several batches so that you're constantly using the same thing and maybe tweaking a little bit, adding a little more hop or a little bit more malt or however you're going to do it. Because that's what I always tell, homebrewers ask us all the time for kind of, hey, can you share the recipe with us? And as you know, Scott, every system is a little bit different, and you can kind of start with a ballpark recipe, but as a brewer, you're going to tweak that to your brew house. I mean, we see differences across the board, don't you think? Like with our pilot brewery, when we're scaling up to full size brewing, and then East Coast to West Coast, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's a major factor. It occurred to me as you were saying, Terence, about buying hop lots. As a home brewer, I know that you can get a lot of different pack sizes, and I would maybe suggest getting a fairly small pack size, because as long as your pellets, and most homebrewers are using pellets, and that's a wonderful thing. The Mylar packs, they're vacuum packed, and as long as they're unopened, they're stable for a long time. Keep them in the freezer. And they're going to be fine. If you open it, however, oxidation starts to occur, whether it's in the freezer or not. So, smaller packs, open as you use them, and keep them in the freezer. And that's pretty good stability, I would say.
Okay, here we go. We got one from Jason Flores. What would you recommend to scale up a recipe to 1 barrel or even 5 barrels? I'm gonna let you go there. You do a lot of scaling.
Well, the first thing I always do when I want to scale something up is you have to know a fair amount about the brewing systems from what you're scaling up from and where you're scaling up to. And as we kind of talked about a little bit ago, that little details like your brew house efficiency is going to be a little different, or your boil evaporation rate is going to be a little different, and you can predict some of these things. But the place I always start, even today when we're going from pilot to production, I always start with the flavor and aroma goals. How are we going to achieve the goal when we go from this brew house to that brew house? And sometimes that means we need to add a little bit more hops late in the boil, or we're going to, cut the first edition hops a little bit, or we need to, little things like that. And that's almost like an experience thing, almost like a gut feel thing. And then beyond that, you use that as your guide. I use that as my guide. And then beyond that, I go straight to the math, and I go straight for brew house efficiency. So I'm going to calculate on a given recipe the efficiencies of where I'm coming from, and I'm going to compare that to the efficiencies I know I'm going to get on a beer of similar size, gravities and so on, to where I'm going to. And then I do a mathematical scale up. Just to try and hit the targets. But even if you hit the analytical targets, your gravities and so on, your ABVs, your BUs, there can be big differences in beer character that come from fermentation, not from the brew house. So that's probably the most important thing to really think about.
Yeah, and I would add, we even see that like when we scale up, just give you an idea, when we go from pilot to production brew house, we always do, we call it a spec brew. So you're actually making, 200, 400 barrels of a spec brew that's going to get you in the ballpark. And then that's when you make the, fine tune adjustments so that we're meeting spec on BU and alcohol and those kind of things. One of the things you'll remember that here is, we like when we're using the torpedo, for torpedo IPA or for extra IPA or the tropical torpedo, we find in the pilot, we don't get quite the efficiency we do in production scale. So we always, kind of ramp up the pilot volumes of dry hopping compared to when we go to production, because we always just get a little richer hop characteristic from that dry hopping technique in our production facility. So,
yeah, good point.
Okay, next question, Scott. You want to?
Yeah, Keith, how's it going? Let's see. Question is, I just started getting into lagering after doing ales and stouts for a few years. For some reason, I can't get that crisp finish I'm looking for. What's the recommendation? Yeah, crisp is a term that we use a lot, very loosely. It's a very loose term. And for me, that term means it has an implication on just lack of defects, but also mouthfeel and balance. So to have a crisp finish to me means, you have a good balance to the beer, but you don't have a lot of acetaldehyde or diacetyl or something to kind of muddy the waters a little bit, right?
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I feel too is like, and a lot of stuff that we've done with, like lighter lagers, pilsners and things like that is, really start playing with maybe different yeast strains, in finding the one that, particularly, some produce a little bit more sulfur, some produce a little bit less, and kind of finding that balance of really what you want. Still, one of my favorite beers that has ever been made by Sierra Nevada. Scott made it in 2010, and it was the foam pilsner that you made, and and it won the gold medal at the World Beer Cup. Still, just an absolute amazing Pilsner, in my opinion, because it had all those right qualities, had that crispness, it had that nice hop. I just love that beer.
That was so good. I remember that vividly too, Terence. And I can tell you that I've tried so many times since from then until now to reproduce that beer, and I've never done it quite like that. That just gives you a sense that, hey, we're here, we're Sierra Nevada, and brewing involves a lot of variables. And it can be really hard to get everything to come in just exactly so. That's pretty rare. That's rare.
Yep. So there was a question, Dan Beveridge, in there somewhere. Did you just skip through that one, Kevin? Or thought I saw Dan Beveridge in there. He's a local dude. But anyways, we got another one here. Christopher Fry. Does freezing hops versus just keeping them in the fridge extend their life and reduce degradation? Yes, the warmer they are, the more they're going to break down. We keep our hop freezers, so we have our hop room. So we have our production room where we're pulling hops out all the time for the brew house, and that's kept at roughly 45 degrees, right? 38 to 45 degrees, right in that range. And then we keep our hop freezer at 25 to 27 degrees. And that's so the colder the better. You are going to drive off some moisture out of them, but
and definitely things that accelerate hop aging are the higher the temperature, the worse it is, but also oxygen. That's a really big one. So if you can keep oxygen out of your hops, they're going to last longer. As well as temperature. Yeah,
and even for now they're available. At most food places, you can buy vacuum sealed little containers. So I'd recommend if you're taking your hops out and you do have that bag that's maybe a couple batches, maybe vacuum seal them for the next time you use them. So, yep, good question. So, I've always have had issues with carbonation in my keg. What are some tips and best practices? My wife actually read me this one last night whenever I got home. Hey, you got your first question. So this is a good one. And I'm gonna go first, Scott, and you chime in when you feel. But what I started thinking about it a little bit, and we used to use the technique, and I know there's homebrewers out there of like you hit your keg. We would have 5-gallon corny cans, and we would hit it with CO2 and just start rocking them because we couldn't take them.
That's right.
We couldn't wait to taste it and drink it. So we always did that. But I'm curious. I have a feeling that this question is in regards to as the keg is sitting in the kegerator, and this is a common thing of. If you search online and go CO2 temperature pressure chart, you should have some charts in there, and you kind of find the CO2 level. Most of our draft beer is around 255 to 265, 27, right in that range. And you just follow that CO2 content. It gives you a pressure you should keep the beer at and a temperature. PV equals nRT, and that will. That should take care of your business. I know a lot of people, one of the common mistakes that we see even in bars and draft systems is if a beer's foaming, generally speaking, it's probably does not have enough top pressure on the keg, or something's wrong with the temperature inside the cold box or the refrigerator. And inherently the beer comes out foaming and everybody goes, "Oh, it's got too much pressure on it." But really what it's actually doing is once it's leaving the keg, it's degassing as fast as possible because there's not enough pressure to force the CO2 into solution.
Or it's too warm, in between the keg and the faucet. it's warming up and gassing out in the line.
Yeah. And that's so I was thinking about that. I haven't gotten my kegerator working in since last year, and that's always a problem in a Chico garage. Whenever it's probably 120 degrees in your garage, well, your faucet's 120 degrees. When you hit it with that first little bit of beer that comes out, there's always that I don't know, a quarter of your pint glass is going to be foam. I just dump that out and start over, right? To cool down that faucet.
In the tanks behind Terence there, for most beers that we do, we're going to tank condition. So that means we're going to refer to the classic dissolved CO2 chart, which is a temperature-pressure relationship. If you search ZAHM, Z-A-H-M, you're going to find that pretty easily on Google. And so at any given pressure and temperature, the CO2 solubility is XYZ. That's very predictable. So to get the CO2 to the right point in the first place, during fermentation, what we'll do in those tanks, they can hold pressure, is we'll close the tanks to a certain pressure and let the pressure from fermentation build. And then we know at primary fermentation, 68 degrees and 17 pounds, we're going to be pretty close to what we want in the final beer. But in, of course, a carboy, you can't do that. So what you need to do is finish the beer fermentation completely before you go to a keg, because one thing you don't want to do is have re-fermentation uncontrolled in your keg, and then your CO2 is pretty uncontrollable at that point in time. And that's something that's not uncommon in the brewing world in general, that can occur for a number of reasons. Maybe we've all had the experience where you get a bottle of beer and it's super pressurized, and the second you open it, it's coming out all over the place, and 9 times out of 10, that's because you've had unanticipated and unplanned fermentation in the package, and that can certainly happen in kegs and home brewing too.
Right. Yep. All right. Next question is from Humboldt Homebrews. I would imagine that Humboldt Homebrews is used other things other than hops in its beer. But anyways, they ask, speak about Torpedo IPA. The use of Magnum as a dry hop seems out of the ordinary, which it is. What goes into trialing hops in different stages of your beers? I'm going to let you dive right into that one, Scott.
I remember the developmental process in Torpedo. This goes back to, I believe, around 2007.
Yep. And
the idea with Magnum was what we were interested in at the time was to really increase the total oil content of the beer. And Magnum, as a variety that we used a lot and had a good supply of, has a good oil content. So the idea was to use a lot of Magnum as the dry hop to bring the oil content up to a certain level, and then fine tune it with the Citra and the Crystal.
Yeah, I'll say that is one thing about Torpedo. It has that rich hop, like the mouthfeel, like you can feel it after you take a sip of Torpedo. It's like, it's oily. It definitely is oily. And it's funny they brought up Torpedo because there was an article, I think Vine Pair, the other day. I think we posted it, and it was about Citra hops. When we first used Citra hops, they were a number, the 394. HBC 394, and that was an experimental hop that was used in Torpedo, and then it took off. And I think I would say probably I don't know if you would agree, but probably 60% of all IPAs probably have some form of Citra somewhere in there, right?
Oh man, it's turned out to be an absolute beautiful hop. It's a probably the go-to hop of the majority of craft brewers out there today. It's wonderful. It's beautiful.
So how do you trial hops in different stages? We just do it, right, Scott?
Well, we've worked with a lot of the hop breeders, hop growers to trial things when there's only just literally a few plants in the ground that they're hand
Right.
picking, and then we can do some very small scale things with that.
Can you speak to a little bit, Scott, of like some of the like going the other way, like non-conventional? Because we've used some aroma hops in the bittering portion, just because low cohumulone and those characteristics. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, interesting. We were just talking about this earlier today in our relatively recent beer, Big Little Thing. Maybe some of you have tried that out there. That beer has a pretty low bitterness level overall. And one of the things that we do in the brew house is we use at the first edition, which is traditionally your bittering edition. And normally you're using a small amount of a high alpha hop in that edition. But in this beer, we're using a huge addition of the lowest alpha hop we can possibly find because we really want to load up the boil with polyphenols and keep the alpha acid out of the equation until the very end of the boil because we want to keep the total BUs down. And so believe it or not, first edition and Big Little Thing is Strisselspalt, which has got to be an alpha level of probably less than 2.
See, and literally that's like non-conventional brewing, right? Brewing practices, but it's developed a great beer that I think we all enjoy, huh?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, it can go in any number of directions. But one thing that I always really do appreciate is doing something counter to traditional wisdom.
Right.
Certain things always apply. You mentioned cohumulone levels. In a Pilsner, you really need to pay close attention to that. But there are a lot of amazing things that people are doing out there.
Right.
Hop research is the most active area of brewing research now, and
Right.
it has been for quite some time. And we're learning so much every day about hops. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And the next question. Hey, imagine that it's hop related. Are we playing with cryogenic hop extracts? And I'll start off, and then I'm going to pass it on to you, Scott. But we were always 100% whole cone hops. We still, our core base beers, 100% whole cone hops. Pale ale will always be 100% whole cone hops. Torpedo, whole cone hops, but some of our newer brands we branched out and started to use lupulin. I'm not sure if we've actually really used cryogenic hop extracts, and I'll let you answer that, Scott. I mean, we play in the pilot with a lot of different stuff. So,
well, we started with using lupulin powder, and this is a concentration of lupulin from hop cones that's done in a milling process in cryogenic conditions. But that's almost necessary to the process inherently, because if you don't use cryogenic conditions with liquid nitrogen cooling and really cold conditions, minus 300 F, you can't sieve the material because it's too sticky, it's too resinous. And so cryogenic treatment is typical for pellet production and lupulin production. And then past the milling stage, sieves, screens and so on, and sifting, then the lupulin is concentrated to various degrees. And I think that's what the question is referring to.
Yeah.
These are concentrated lupulin products, and we started doing that. The first production beer that we came out with that used this was Hop Hunter.
mm-hmm.
and we found it to be real challenging because the lupulin powder is like a precursor to what is generally known as a type 35 pellet. Only it doesn't go through the pelletizing process, so it's a powder. And as it turns out, in the brewery, it's pretty difficult to deal with just loose powder. What do you do with it? How do you get it in the tank? How do you get it into the beer? That was a learning curve for us. You remember that, Terence?
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
you
Oh
dump it
yeah.
on the beer, and it's just going to float on the top like a big mass.
That's it. Every time I'd walk by the crew dealing with it, I would always go, "Oh, it's powder day. Everybody's happy."
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we've learned a lot since then, but now you can find a number of different cryogenic pellets. Some people call them soft pellets, or there's a number of different brand names that some of the suppliers are using. But it's a pretty similar process from supplier to supplier.
So our Ween fan, who could also be an Eric Clapton hardcore fan, EC hardcore, he would love to hear, or she would love to hear your thoughts on Kveik yeast. What do you? I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you go with this one. I mean, we played with it. We played with some other yeast strains. Very much some interesting flavors and characteristics. One thing I'm going to point out is we've used it and we like it. It does have. It seems to drop off a little bit on flavor stability over time. At least that's what I've noticed. And I'll let Scott chime in what his thoughts are on it.
Yeah, I agree with you on the flavor stability point. There are, as far as I know, maybe 8 or 9 different unique strains of the Kveik yeast. And well, first of all, some people say Kveik or Kveik, or I don't know.
We can't even pronounce it right.
I think you need to be Norwegian to get that
Okay.
one quite right. But
Okay.
anyway, yeah, they're really fun. You can have, even on a really big beer, a 20 Plato beer, you can have complete fermentation done in, I don't know, 2 days. It's incredible. You're dealing with really hot temperatures. Used to be the only really warm fermentations that we would do would be with saisons. And with the Kveik, you have 100-degree fermentations. You don't even try to control it. It's really hot, and they just go like hell. They absolutely go like hell. It's amazing.
Talk about unconventional brewing.
Yeah, and
Right.
there's a lot of different strains. The one we've used here mostly in Mills River is I want to say it's called the Hornindal, and it's pretty clean. I think you could get away with a lot of different styles, but I don't know. It's a double-edged sword because on the first place, you can have amazingly fast fermentations, very complete fermentations, and just get on with the dry hopping or whatever it is you decide to do with the beer. But on the other hand, if you don't serve it reasonably fresh, it's not so long before you start to see beer aging characteristics show up. And I don't know the mechanism for that. We haven't studied it, but I assume it's due to those very hot fermentation temperatures.
Yep. I'd agree. All right. Let's see. Brian Wallace. He actually went to beer camp. I think it might have been in Scott time frame. Remember when you did Brooks with Russian River, you were concerned about contamination. How did you go about brewing and bottling that beer? You were here. That was right. You were here in Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
When we did that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We did, I don't know, a dozen different versions of that beer. The first part of it was really focused on the base beer, where we were playing a lot with salting, particularly with bringing in terms of traditional brewery practices, we were doing the opposite of what you should do. We just bring the water hardness way up by using calcium carbonate, and that's not unusual in saisons, for example, just due to the nature of the water in Belgium in certain areas. But we spent a lot of time on that. But the real fun, you'll remember, Terence, and I want to say Aaron Porter, I'm going to call out Aaron Porter, was responsible for figuring out the dosing of the Brettanomyces.
Yes.
And that was right in the filling line.
Through the inseminator.
That's right. That's right.
That Ken named. So we actually, and if I remember right, we did kegs of Brettanomyces, slurried Brettanomyces, like a propagation, and we had a stir bar in the bottom. Yeah, inside the keg.
Like a stir bar, like this big, a big one.
Yeah. And so we had it on a giant stir plate, and as the bottle went by, like we actually designed it around our nitrogen drip on our cork and cage line, where instead of a drip of nitrogen, it would have a drip of Brettanomyces. And that whole area was cordoned off. We had baths. You had to walk through the baths. Everyone wore white suits. You know what you would see in a traditional like biochemical. I don't know.
It's like a hazmat suit.
Yeah, hazmat suit. And so, anyways, that's how we did it. We did all the bottle conditioning was via Brettanomyces drip in, and it was no other bottle conditioning. It was strictly Brettanomyces in that. And by the way, you can actually go online and you can buy the 9-year version of that. Every year we release of the same packaging that's kept in our warehouse. We just change out the label every year. It's all the same beer. But it's really interesting how it changes over the years. So, and it holds up like crazy. Orval, right? All right. How do you keep your copper shiny?
Yeah.
I know how I keep mine. Also, I love you guys and keep up the good work. Thank you, Zach. Really appreciate it. I will say this.
There's some copper behind me. Can we see it?
So Scott's Copper and our West Brewhouse in California are copper clad, so it makes it much easier to keep them shiny and bright. The East Side Brewhouse, our original brewhouse that's right next to the restaurant in California, is that's a true copper kettle, and we will polish. Yeah, we will polish that on occasion. Do you remember the name of what was the product? Flitz. That's right, Flitz. And so we hand polish our kettles. And I will say this, that the East Brewhouse right next to the restaurant, within 1 day it's tarnished because of temperature changes and moisture in the air and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's how we keep them nice and bright and shiny. And I will say also that in the old days, I was always told that the acidity in wort was used. So they would take a bucket of wort and splash it up on the kettles in the old days to kind of keep it nice, bright, and shiny.
Yeah, we polish them by hand here too, and I don't know if you can see behind me. Maybe I can get out of my own way, but some of those stacks, they're really tall, so we have to get up on scissor lifts and everything. We polish them by hand, and right after they're polished, they glow with the lightest color. It's amazing, and then it doesn't take long before they get more of a golden hue to them, and that's just oxidation happening.
Yep.
I don't know, what can you do? But hey, please, if you go to a brewery, don't touch the copper. Just don't do it.
Yeah, don't. Hey, and by the way, Scott, if they do, we know who they are. We got their fingerprints.
That's true.
Right there.
We have that on record.
Yeah. So, okay. And then Kevin added something in here. Any advice for anyone who wants to learn more about homebrewing? You know what? I'm gonna say, join a club. Look around where you live. If you're going to a bar, you'll probably pick out the homebrewers. They're probably kind of hanging out and they're probably talking about homebrewing. So, you know, I think most communities have a homebrew club or something of that nature. Best way to do it. In all honesty, don't go out and spend a bunch of money buying a bunch of homebrew equipment. They love to share information. They'll invite you over. You can learn a little bit. You can decide whether you want to jump in. It's an incredible hobby. It'll suck most of your life away from you on the weekends.
You mean it'll enrich your life? That's what.
Well, it will. It will. It absolutely will. And I'll tell you this, that you will become an incredible dishwasher. You'll wash a lot of dishes. Cleaning is a big thing, and it's absolutely essential and important in the brewing process. If you walk around our breweries, they're very clean for a reason, and that's so that we can kind of avoid any kind of contamination, anything like that. So it absolutely just find a local homebrew club. Go to homebrew shop and ask them, is there a club around? And you'll find friends for sure.
There's a ton of forums out there that are full of information and they're searchable. That's an amazing resource. Tons of books, all the way back to Papazian's classic Joy of Homebrewing, which everybody should have.
Yes, that is one you should buy. If you want to get into it, just buy that book. Good investment, and see if you want to dive all the way in. Yeah. Hey, I'll tell you, it's changed Scott and my life. It's changed Ken Grossman's life.
That's right.
It's great.
All right. A question from Keith. When doing double dry hop edition, should the first edition be at high Kreuzen and the second a few days later? Oh, that's really up to what you're trying to accomplish. Right. A lot of times we'll do an edition during the mid to tail end of primary fermentation, and then another one after the beer is cold again. But it really depends on what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, we found that we extract out different flavor compounds and oils based off of the temperature of the fermentation. So definitely, there you go. That's a classic homebrew thing. Just keep trying different stuff, right?
Yeah. Scott? Try everything. There's no rules.
Absolutely.
And keep the beer clean. Beyond that, it's an amazing experience and limitless possibilities.
Absolutely. Scott, this was fun. I hope everybody out there listening had a great time. We got to do this a little bit more, right? Maybe every day should be National Homebrew Day.
It should be.
Right.
Should be. Yeah. Cheers, everybody.
Okay. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, Terence.
Scott, talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.